Your child might be getting B's right now, maybe even A's. And you look at that report card and you think, okay, we're fine. We're doing fine. I need you to stop and listen to me for a second, because that report card is one of the most misleading documents the school system has ever produced. And I say that as someone who spent 12 years inside it. Here's what the data actually shows. 90% of American parents believe their child is reading and doing math at or above grade level. 90%. But only 26% of 8th graders are actually proficient in math, and only 31% are proficient in reading. That means the majority of parents in this country are looking at a B on a report card and thinking their kid is fine, while their kid is quietly falling behind. And the school isn't going to call you, not yet, maybe not ever. Today I want to break down exactly how this happens, why the system is built to keep you in the dark, what the real warning signs look like before the grades ever drop, and the concrete steps you can take this week, not next semester, not after the next report card, this week, to find out where your child actually stands, not where the paper says they stand, where they actually stand. Let's start with a number. 5 years. It has been 5 years since the pandemic shut down schools across this country. 5 years of recovery programs, federal relief money, tutoring initiatives, summer school, and emergency interventions. And as of spring 2025, the average American student in grades 3 through 8 is still nearly half a grade level behind where they were in 2019. Half a grade level, after 5 full years. The share of students meeting grade level benchmarks has been essentially flat since 2023. Not recovering. Flat. And the federal relief money that was funding most of those recovery programs? It expired in fall 2024. The support systems are being dismantled, the gaps are not. And here is what makes this even more alarming. The older your child was when the pandemic hit, the harder the recovery has been. A 2025 Brookings study tracked learning outcomes by grade level across the pandemic years and found something that surprised even the researchers. Younger kids, those in preschool through 2nd grade in 2020, have largely caught back up. Their brains were still in early development, they were still building foundational skills, and with support, they recovered. But students who were in 4th, 5th, 6th grade during the shutdowns? Many of them never fully recovered. The learning gap stopped closing. If your child is currently in middle school or high school, there is a real and measurable chance that they are still carrying academic damage from 5 years ago that was never properly addressed and that you were never properly informed about. Now let's talk about why you don't know. And I want to be very clear here. I am not blaming teachers. The teachers I worked alongside for over a decade were doing their absolute best inside a system that was never designed to give parents accurate information. The problem is not the people. The problem is structural. It is built into how schools communicate with families. Most report cards do not measure just what your child knows. They measure a basket of things: attendance, effort, homework completion, classroom behavior, participation, attitude. A 2nd grader can raise his hand every single day, turn in every single homework assignment, sit quietly and cooperatively at his desk, and be reading at a 1st grade level, and come home with a B. You see the B, you do not see the reading level. Those are two completely different things, and the report card does not separate them. A 2023 study by Learning Heroes and Gallup put a number to this. Among students who were both chronically absent and significantly behind grade level, 4 in 10 were still receiving a B or higher in their core subjects. 4 in 10 students who were measurably, seriously behind, walking home with Bs on their report card. Before the pandemic, that number was 1 in 10. Grade inflation got dramatically worse after COVID, as schools tried to keep struggling students from failing out entirely. And the grades never came back down to reality. The grades went up. The actual learning did not follow. And the result is a generation of parents walking around with false confidence about where their children stand academically. Over 60% of American parents reported they were unaware their child was falling behind until it had already become a serious problem. Not a slight dip, a serious, compounding, hard-to-fix problem. And by the time it becomes serious, you are not dealing with a gap you can close in a month or two. Research from the National Assessment of Educational Progress is unambiguous on this point. Unresolved learning gaps do not stay the same size. They widen over time, they compound. A child who is half a grade level behind in 4th grade and receives no intervention is not half a grade level behind in 8th grade. They are further behind. Each year that passes without targeted, specific support, the gap becomes harder to close and the child becomes less confident that closing it is even possible. Here is the part that should make every parent genuinely angry. The school has no legal obligation to contact you the moment your child starts slipping. Most districts send report cards twice a year, maybe 4 times if you're lucky. Between those moments, silence. There is no alarm system, there is no early warning call, no flag goes up in the principal's office that triggers a call to your house. One school psychologist at the University of Missouri who studies parent-teacher communication described it plainly: teachers historically did not receive training on how to talk to parents about academic struggles. Some teachers make assumptions that certain parents won't know how to respond to difficult news. Some are directed by administration to keep parent communications warm and positive. And some districts have put everything on digital portals that parents are expected to navigate independently. Portals filled with data presented in ways that most families find completely impossible to interpret. One parent's story that I keep coming back to. An outside after-school program tested her son and told her he was reading below grade level. She was shocked. She went back to the school and asked why she hadn't been told. The school's response was that all the data had been available online the entire time. She had looked at that portal. She couldn't understand what she was reading. Nobody had ever sat down with her and explained what those numbers meant for her child. Parents can't solve a problem they don't know they have. That line came from the co-founder of Learning Heroes, an organization that has spent years studying exactly this gap between what schools know and what parents are told. It should be printed on the front of every school newsletter in this country. So what does falling behind actually look like from inside your home? Because here is what makes this so difficult. It almost never looks like failing. It almost never starts with bad grades. It starts with your child coming home quieter than usual. It starts with not wanting to talk about what happened at school. It starts with homework that suddenly takes twice as long as it used to, and a child who looks frustrated and exhausted but cannot explain why. It starts with a kid who used to love reading and now avoids it completely, a student who used to raise their hand in class and now sits completely silent. These are behavioral signals. They are not academic signals, and they almost always show up weeks or months before the grades move. Most parents miss them entirely because they are watching the report card. But the report card is a lagging indicator. By the time the grade reflects the problem has been quietly building for a long time. Research consistently identifies several specific behavioral patterns that parents should treat as early warning signs. A child who used to complete assignments independently but now needs constant help or gives up quickly. A child who starts expressing new anxiety or stress around tests and schoolwork. Not the normal kind of nerves, but something that feels heavier and more persistent. A child who pulls back from group activities or stops participating in class discussions not because they are shy, but because they feel lost and are afraid of being exposed in front of their classmates. Children who are falling behind almost always feel some degree of shame about it. They often don't know how to tell you what is happening. They go quieter. They get more avoidant, and the school keeps sending home Bs. Here is something important. I want you to understand about how these gaps actually grow. Learning in school is cumulative. It builds on itself. 3rd grade math is built on 2nd grade math. Middle school reading comprehension is built on elementary vocabulary and fluency. When a child misses a foundational piece and never gets it properly filled in, every lesson that builds on top of that missing piece becomes harder. The child starts working twice as hard just to keep up, then 3 times as hard, until they hit a wall and stop trying. That is not a character flaw. That is what happens when a gap goes unaddressed long enough. And the frustrating truth is that one-on-one or small group tutoring, not summer school, not after-school programs, but consistent, high-frequency targeted tutoring, is one of the most well-researched and effective interventions available. A landmark study that analyzed nearly 200 educational experiments found that frequent one-to-one tutoring was consistently one of the most powerful tools for helping struggling students catch up. Not the cheapest option, but by far one of the most effective. Now let me tell you what you can actually do right now. 3 specific things. This week. The first is to stop using the report card as your primary source of information and start asking for benchmark scores. Every school district runs standardized assessments throughout the year. These are tests that measure grade-level mastery against a national standard. They are not the same as the grade on the report card, and they do not measure the same thing. Contact your child's teacher or the front office this week and ask directly, what do my child's most recent benchmark assessments show? What percentile are they in for reading, for math? What does that percentile mean in terms of grade-level expectations? If they give you a vague answer or point you to a portal, ask them to walk you through it in plain language. You are entitled to that information. If they struggle to explain it clearly, that itself tells you something. The second thing is to take the behavioral signals seriously. Avoidance of school, resistance to homework that wasn't there 6 months ago, going silent about what happened in class, a noticeable drop in confidence, withdrawal from things they used to enjoy. These signals appear before the grades move. They are your real early warning system. If you start seeing them consistently, not once but as a pattern over a few weeks, don't wait for the next report card. Act now. The earlier you identify the gap, the more options you have. The longer you wait, the narrower those options become. The third thing is to request a face-to-face meeting with your child's teacher. Not an email, not a note. A sit-down meeting. Come prepared with 4 questions and do not leave until you have real answers to all 4. Question 1. What grade level is my child actually performing at in reading and in math, based on benchmark data, not report card grades? Question 2. Are there any skill gaps you have noticed that haven't yet shown up in their grades? Question 3. What specific intervention, if any, is the school currently providing for my child? And question 4. What would you recommend I do at home over the next 30 days? Those 4 questions will give you more actionable information than 3 years of report cards. And if the teacher seems surprised that you are asking them, that is important information too. One more thing I need to say directly, because I hear from a lot of parents who feel this way. When they find out their child has been falling behind, sometimes for years, the first thing they feel is guilt. Like they should have seen it sooner. Like they should have pushed harder or asked better questions. I want to push back on that very firmly. You were handed a broken information system and told it was working accurately. You were given a report card designed to be administratively convenient and told it reflected your child's true academic standing. You were not given the tools you needed to see what was actually happening. That is the system's failure, not yours. The parents who successfully turn this around are not the ones who caught it earliest. They are the ones who acted with the most urgency once they finally knew. You know now. That is what matters. The pandemic learning loss is not over. 5 years later, millions of children are still carrying academic gaps that were never fully addressed. The majority of their parents still don't know it. Now you do. You know what to look for. You know what to ask. Ask. And you know that waiting is the one thing you cannot afford to do. If this helped you see something you hadn't seen before, subscribe. Every week, I break down what the education system is actually doing inside those walls and what you as a parent can do about it. And tell me in the comments, did you ever find out that your child was further behind than the school had let on? What happened when you found out? I read every single one.